Council of State formally ratifies presidential pardon to 45 Nigerians.
2 inmates were presented for pardon, 39 inmates for clemency, and 4 ex-convicts for presidential pardon.
Nigeria's Akinwumi Adesina, re-elected president of African Development Bank for another 5 years.
Now we must help Africa to build and to build back boldly, but smartly, paying greater attention to quality growth.
Ministry of Aviation shifts resumption of international flights by 1 week.
There are some issues because you're going to have an initial platform, and depending on where you're going, it's going to direct you to another particular platform to deal with that.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss resumption of international flights plus peace pact in Southern California.
Right, glad to announce the resumption of international flights from August the 29th, 2020, beginning with Lagos and Abuja. As we did with the domestic flight resumption, protocols and procedures will be announced in due course. We thank you for your patience. And that was the initial message on the Twitter handle of the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Surika, signaling the commencement of the end of nearly 6 months of inactivity in the aviation industry.
But just yesterday, Clark, at the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 briefing, the Ministry of Aviation announced a 1-week shift from the 29th of August date to the 5th of September this year to enable them fine-tune non-aviation logistics. Now, the lockdown of the aviation industry had affected quite a broad range of interests: family, friends, businesses, travelers, and tourists, many of whom, in some cases, got stranded in foreign countries with unexpected financial expenses. And some of Nigerians who were also stranded had to fund their evacuation from the host countries.
Indeed, Kingsley. Now, the shutdown also impacted heavily on world economy. Now, as we know, the aviation industry is an enabler of global trade and tourism, as well as enhancing international diplomacy. So it provides swift, efficient, and most reliable means of transportation for travelers across countries, regions, and continents.
Absolutely, Claire. There's no question about that. As you must be aware, most travelers sometimes prefer air transportation, not just because of the speed, but also because of comfort and safety. So beyond tourism and hospitality, the aviation sector does provide a global transportation network which helps connect people, places, businesses, and cultures, and thereby impacting on the global economy.
And talking about the impact on, of course, of the sector on global economies, all branches of the aviation industry, beginning from the airlines, air navigation service providers, airports, civil aerospace sector, all directly or indirectly, of course, Kingsley, supports job employment. So, right. On the global scale, the aviation industry is estimated to contribute more than $7.6 trillion, towards gross domestic product GDP, and about $1.7 billion to the Nigerian economy. But that was just before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Unfortunately, as different countries took measures to check the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, the closure of borders and restriction on movement disrupted activities in the aviation subsector, as many airlines were grounded. Now, the International Air Transport Association, IATA, estimates that the COVID-19 crisis has put some 120,000 Nigerian jobs in the sector at risk.
So, as Kingsley, has indicated, the aviation industry is one of the worst hit sectors by COVID-19. Now, the pandemic prompted the closure of major airports in the country, and that would include, of course, the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos, Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja, Port Harcourt International Airport in Magwa, Malam Aminu Kano International Airport in Kano, and, of course, Akanu Ibiam International Airport located in Enugu. Now, those airports have been shut down for the past 23 weeks or thereabouts.
Well, that's right. Claire, Caribbean Enugu, of course, is scheduled to be reopened this weekend. It had been closed for a year on account of reconstruction and rehabilitation works on that airport. Now, with the easing of the lockdown, Nigeria resumed domestic flight operations on the 8th of last month, that's July. And the Honorable Minister of Aviation has said that so far there appears to be no record of any confirmed in-flight transmission of the coronavirus. Now, it's been indicated that the planned resumption of international flights now scheduled for just about a week from now. All evacuation flights introduced in the wake of the ban on international travels will now be discontinued.
And in addition to that, the minister says 4 flights each will be allowed into Lagos and Abuja airports. That's on a daily basis. And that the country will apply, that's Nigeria, will apply the principle of reciprocity. That what this means is simple, that flights from countries, especially the European Union, which have flights from Nigeria on their banned list, will equally be prevented from operating here in Nigeria. But the most important question to ask at this point in time is how ready, of course, is the aviation sector to resume operations, even with the 1-week postponement? What are the protocols and procedure or non-aviation procedures, for safety? This will form the thrust of our conversation on Good Morning Nigeria today. I am Claire Adelabo Abdurrazak, welcoming you once again to the program, the last edition for this week.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Claire to also welcome you to the program. And as always, we are broadcasting live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're right here in our headquarters studios in Abuja. This morning here, the skies are gray. But of course, we do hope you enjoy our program as we roll on. In addition to our complimentary segments, which will include business news and newspaper review, we of course have the highlights of the news coming up presently. But we also have another very important topic to deal with, and that's the Peace Pact in southern Kaduna. All right, so stay tuned as we now join Chimobi Water-Najit for the morning news. Good morning, Chimobi.
Hello, good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. The Council of State has formally ratified the grant of presidential pardon to 45 Nigerians in line with the recommendations of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Prerogative of Mercy. The Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malady, announced this after the virtual meeting of the Council presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari.
2 inmates were presented for pardon, 39 inmates for clemency, and 4 ex-convicts for presidential pardon.
We received a commendation that our response is well coordinated, is robust, and the level of engagement with the subnationals and other critical stakeholders. This is one response that has attracted even the review of the international community. We will not relent in our efforts as members of the Presidential Task Force, but we will continue in an accelerated manner.
This center will provide the strategic framework for containing the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, especially those coming from across our borders within the sub-region and also those coming in through the maritime environment. And I want to reassure you that a lot is being done in conjunction with other entities of government to deal with problems that I may not mention here.
And good news for Nigerians as Akinwumi Adesina has won election for a second 5-year term as President of African Development Bank. This is coming as Nigerian and other African leaders challenged the management of the bank on social and economic development strategy post-COVID-19.
Africa has lost over a decade of economic growth. Africa's recovery will be long and difficult. Now we must help Africa to build and to build back boldly, but smartly, paying greater attention to quality growth, health, climate, and the environment.
I believe that a successful virtual annual meeting and the election of the president will send a strong signal to the world and regional member countries that the African Development Bank remains a strong and stable bank that will continue to partner with the continent in its developmental efforts, particularly at this time of global uncertainty and severe challenges.
And similarly, President Muhammadu Buhari, on behalf of the Federal Executive Council and Nigerians in general, felicitates with President of African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, on his re-election for a second term in office. A statement from a special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, says the news of the victory came during the Council of State meeting, which was attended by former heads of state, Senate President, governors, some ministers, and senior government officials. As Secretary to Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, announced the good news, President Buhari led a round of applause and declared he deserves it. The President extends appreciation to the African Union for its endorsement of the AFDB President much earlier and to shareholders of the bank who worked tirelessly to ensure the return of the visionary leader. President Buhari believes Dr. Adesina's versatility, experience in both national and international engagements will be further deployed to energize the Pan-African financial institution, urging him to remain focused and steadfast in pursuing the noble goals of making life better for Africans through various development plans already captured as high fives. And moving over to politics, the Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, says the Commission is greatly concerned about some of the statements, actions, and excesses of some of the actors and their supporters in the build-up to the governorship election on the 19th of next month in Edo State. He is currently in Benin, where he is meeting with key players.
The security agencies have assured us that they are going to be professional and neutral in the management of the forthcoming elections.
The current system of 4 years is going to keep on remaining. I think the advice I want to give to the political parties is that perhaps they consider having what it is called unwritten constitution.
And on health, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has announced 296 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The latest figures released brings the total number of confirmed cases to 53,317 infections in the country. A breakdown of the new cases from 17 states indicates that Plateau recorded the highest number of the day with 85 new cases, while Enugu has 46 new cases. Oyo 31, Lagos 21, Rivers 20, FCT 15, Kaduna 13, Bauchi has 12, Delta and Ekiti State recorded 11 cases each. Others are Akwa Ibom with 7, Ebonyi 6, Kwara 5, Ogun has and Osun State recorded 4 cases each, while Gombe recorded 3 new cases. Now, the day's tally is completed by Niger State recording 2 cases. Confirmed cases by state, Lagos has the highest with 18,056, followed by the FCT with 5,094, and Oyo comes third with 3,091 cases. With the latest development, total number of active cases stands at 11,580, while 40,726 cases have been successfully treated and discharged, while 1,011 patients died, unfortunately. And the resumption of international flights has been shifted by 1 week to 5th of September to enable the Ministry of Aviation fine-tune required logistics. Meanwhile, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has launched 2 online dashboards to track the national response and donations towards fighting the pandemic.
Online platform where before departing you are supposed to go fill information, health information, contact information, and pay for your second COVID test in Nigeria 7 days after you arrive. There are some issues because you're going to have an initial platform, and depending on where you're going, it's going to direct you to another particular platform to deal with that. So we're still working on that.
We will continue to collaborate with the private sector in creating models that ensure all our activities are easily accessible by the public in line with the Freedom of Information Act.
Any one of you can go onto these dashboards to see how we are mitigating this pandemic, as well as the resources required and the resources that have been utilized.
If every shop, every restaurant, if every mosque, every church insists on this, it's only then that we'll be able to arrest and slow down the rate of infection.
And that's the morning news. The program continues with Claire and Kingsley just after the break. Stay with us.
She cries in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry means nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she's left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their cruelty. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
To me, to you, it's up to us to make the world a better place. A place where we can learn, where we can dance, where we can live together in peace and harmony. It's up to me, to you. It's up to us to make the world a better place. To me, to you.
Stay indoors, wash your hands regularly, stay safe and stay healthy. Indomie noodles, tasty nutrition, good for you.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria this Friday, and time to look at the trending business news. And it would appear that the Central Bank of Nigeria may be considering a one-year open market operation for foreigners. We have details on the business news.
A plan for a special one-year open market operation available only to foreign investors is being considered by the Central Bank of Nigeria to bring in some much-needed foreign exchange. In March of this year, a similar attempt was made by the CBN to lure in forex, but no bids were made for any OMO bills slated for sale. Some investment experts believe that with Nigeria's estimated dollar backlog being as high as $7 billion and the central bank's inability to converge the multiple rates at the import-export window, convincing investors to participate will be a hard sell. Investors willing to do so might only be willing to do it at a higher premium. Now let's head to the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange to see how the market performed on Thursday, the 27th of August, 2020. With Business News, I'm Ronami Egirani.
Thank you, Ronami Egirani, for the business package. Next is newspaper review.
All right. Oh, yeah. Kingsley, Laya isn't here today, so
yeah, that's
we'll
right.
do the review ourselves. Okay, let me begin with the Daily Trust. And the lead story is on troops raid terrorist cell in Nasarawa. It has 4 riders, 410 suspects surrender, bomb-making factory destroyed, group dislodged in Niger 11 years ago, and why radical groups are re-emerging. That's according to experts. The story continues on page 5. And the picture story is there. According to this paper, women and children found during the raids by troops of Operation World Stroke at suspected Dar es Salaam terrorist den in the local government area of Nasarawa State. And you can find the women and children, of course. On the right is a teenage wife and child of a bandit with arms recovered during the raid. Story is trending at the foot of the paper. Federal government shaped international flight resumption to September 5. Kama approached National Assembly. Oshimbajo tells aggrieved pastors. And 16 die in Zamfara road crash. All right, a little below the nameplate, blasphemy. I am ready to sign death warrant against Kanu Singer. Details of that on page 8. Now, dollar to trade at 386 naira. CBN resumes forex sales to BDC, page 16. Additional remains AFDB president, assumes duty Tuesday. Details of that on page 16. Kingsley.
All right, we also have the Daily Times. Daily Times below the nameplate, that's where the list story is. Says new dawn in Southeast as Akano Ibiam International Airport opens on Sunday. That should be reopens on Sunday. It's not a new airport, it's just been refurbished, it's been closed for a year. Details can be found on page 2. The photograph there on the front page shows the Minister of Youth and Sports Development and others flagging off the football pitch regrassing project at the Moshood Abiola National Stadium in Abuja. The regrassing is being sponsored by Dangote Industries Limited. And then right there at the foot of the paper, above the strip advert, AFDB presidency, how additional beat U.S. to clinch re-election as African Development Bank president. Legislature, Senate wants more funds for NEDC amid alleged graft. That is the Northeast Development Agency Commission. Appointment, President Buhari appoints DQ, Amnesty Program boss, and disengages Dokubo. Details of that story can be found on page 2. So those are all the headlines that we have this morning from the papers.
The story on the Daily Trust, the troops that have re-emerged in Nasarawa State, according to these riders here, it's the same group that was dislodged 11 years ago. So I'm wondering, this usually should call for strict vigilance, by the residents of that community.
That's right, I agree with you.
Yes, because they come in, it's a gradual thing for them to settle down and then begin the bomb-making factory. It shows that a lot still needs to be done in terms of vigilance.
There's no question about that. Sometimes we take our own security for granted, and community and family and even individual responsibilities are usually neglected. How sensitive are we to occurrences around us?
Precisely.
And to whom then do we report? That's one leg. But the other leg is that you also have security agencies that have ordinarily a presence in all localities throughout the country. There's no local government, for instance, where officially you are not supposed to have a DSS, either an operative or an office. So when all of these developments are taking place, what are they doing? You also have the police. The police has presence throughout the entire federation. So when this build-up is starting, what is it that they are doing? Or if they file their reports, what happens to those reports in terms of operational responses? When you hear that so many bandits or kidnappers have been flushed out of a certain camp in some forest, the encampment didn't just start overnight. It was a gradual process, and then what happened before it then became a point of threat? I think that's a significant thing to worry about. I'm also concerned about the photograph on the front page of the Daily Times this morning. So flagging off the pitch regrassing project at the National Stadium in Abuja. And this is, of course, being sponsored by Dangote Industries Limited. Well, why should the regrassing of a pitch be such a big deal? Let's face it. Now, it speaks to our poor maintenance culture all over again. And then why would it also require a private enterprise, Dangote Industries, for the pitch to be regrassed? These are the kind of issues that we have to deal with. You go to the National Stadium in Lagos, in fact, you go to other stadia around the country, they are run down. So when is the maintenance schedule supposed to kick into effect, and who is supposed to do what? And in the meantime, you have officials of the Sports Council, either at the state level or at the national level, which is the National Sports Commission, and everybody does virtually nothing with regard to the maintenance of stadium facilities. I
wish you can see that picture again, Kingsley, so that
that's right. It's on the front page of the Daily Times that you have to have an entire committee to regrass a pitch. You're not saying that you want to plant 10 hectares of grass. What is the size of the pitch that it will require Dangote Industries to get this done? I remember on Good Morning Nigeria, I must have been about a year or two ago, we had as a conversation on this program, the maintenance of public facilities. There's an association that that responsibility to say, look, these are facility managers. So when are we going to get into the stage, or to get to the stage where we now begin to employ facility managers to say, look, take care of these facilities, this is your profession, this is your job, whatever is required to be done, keep those facilities in optimum shape for use. It's probably the same thing that happens to the National Arts Theatre, that it was run down, and then you don't have it to have a special arrangement, bring in the central bank and other stakeholders to revitalize the National Stadium. Sometimes these are the things that actually drain us as a people, and you just wonder what's happening.
Indeed, we have an issue with maintenance culture, and it's of course manifesting in most infrastructure, decay that we experience these days. Another thing again that, well, this is a thing for celebration. That's the re-election of Additional as the president of the AFDB, and against all odds. So this is a good one for Nigeria, indeed, and our international image. So I think we must congratulate him and all that.
That's right. Congratulations to him. Of course, President Buhari has led Nigeria and Nigerians in issuing words of congratulations, and we hope that he has a successful second term, which is for another 5 years.
Indeed.
All right.
Kingsley, we have the editorial this morning is taken from the Nigerian Pilot, and it's on preparing for looming flood disaster. I'll just read out the crux of this matter, of this editorial. Our yearly experiences have shown that each time floods come, communities are displaced, many people are drowned, farmlands, means of livelihood are destroyed, people are cut off from cities, their homes, communities, and loved ones because highways and community roads are washed off by floods. We urge the federal government to take proactive steps towards mobilizing and empowering relevant agencies to make advanced preparation for this fast-coming nationwide flood disaster.
Well, I think the editorial is probably behind the news. It's seeking to urge the federal government to make preparations, advanced preparations for all of this. The federal government agencies have been up and running. We've had NIMET, which is a federal agency, has issued its weather forecast. Now, NISA, that is the Hydrological Services Agency, has also issued its flood alert repeatedly. Indeed, we had the Director General here on Good Morning Nigeria. And it is not just a matter of issuing these advisories. They have have also been seeking to engage with state governments. Unfortunately, part of what emerged some weeks ago was that not many state governments appear to be enthusiastic in utilizing the information coming out from these federal agencies. Now, in terms of disaster management, NEMA itself is up and running. Unfortunately, again, the problem with NEMA is that it has very little cooperation for a good number of state emergency management agencies. A few state management agencies have, of course, been waking up. Lagos is one to be noted, and there are a couple of others. So the responsibility now is mostly that of the subnational entities, state governments, and then local governments. And then individuals and communities and families also have to take personal and collective responsibility. Why am I saying this? There was a video that went around yesterday. It was a clip of a flood somewhere in Lugbe. It was a flash flood, and there was a man in the video who was being warned of the point of the flash flood, and for some inexplicable reason, the gentleman, kept coming towards the point of the flash flood, and unfortunately, he appeared to have been swept away. And I think that the FCT Emergency Management Agency are still in search of him wherever. I think they're looking downstream somewhere around Wawalada area where they might pick him up. So this is the floods, flash floods, certainly not a joke, but all agencies, particularly at a subnational level, ordinarily should be up and doing.
All right, Kingsley, thank you for all the information that you have brought out this review. And that's our newspaper review this morning, and we do like to send messages of quick recovery to Bayo. We expect him back soonest. All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be right back in a moment.
Like every mother, I'm worried about dangerous insects, especially mosquitoes, which spread diseases like malaria to my loved ones. This year, I'm not afraid. I'm using New Mortein Instakill. New Mortein Instakill's improved formulation knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster. Not even a single mosquito is spared, because even one mosquito bite can cause malaria. Mortein Insta knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster.
NTA TV College Jos, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, is currently admitting students for its ordinary diploma programs in television journalism, television production, and television engineering. Interested candidates are advised to obtain relevant information concerning eligibility at our website at www.ntatvc.edu.ng or marketing department of any NTA station nationwide. For further information, contact Assistant Director, Marketing, NTA TV College Jos on 0803-314-4383 or the Academic Office of the College on 0806-980-9807. Announcer, Registrar.
For over 70 years, we've practiced healthy hygiene habits together. The world needs us to keep our fight going against germs. So let's wash our hands for 20 seconds regularly. Dettol. Protect what's worth fighting for.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Let's kickstart our conversation for today, which is on the resumption of international flights, scheduled to have started rescheduled to start on September 5. Let's take this report put together by Uyemi Ajayi.
The prevalence of coronavirus pandemic globally ushered in a new norm, with many activities changing and some put on hold. One of such was the restriction of movement of people in order to curb the spread of the virus. Then, domestic and international flights were suspended in countries including Nigeria. This has led to airlines being grounded and many workers losing their jobs due to inability to pay salaries. Though flights on essential activities were meticulously allowed in the airspace, but seriously monitored aside the continuous evacuation of stranded Nigerians abroad, which were carried out in batches. However, after a series of COVID-19 preventive measures put in place by the government, domestic flight operations were allowed to commence in early July, and this was to ease the COVID-19 lockdown to allow ease movement across the states. The flights resumed at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in the capital Abuja and Murtala Mohammed Domestic Terminal in the commercial city of Lagos. However, it was a welcome development to many recently at the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 briefing that international flights will resume on the 5th of September 2020 after a week shift from the initial August 29th date to fine-tune protocol and guidelines. This means that international travelers must test negative for COVID-19 before departure abroad and will pay for another test to be conducted 1 week after arriving the country. In addition to the development, the domestic passenger service charge is set to increase from 1,000 naira to 2,000 naira, while ECOWAS regional service charge is now $80 from $50. The continental passenger service charge is now $100 as compared to the initial $50, and these will commence from 1st of September. The Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria FAN says these increments became necessary due to inflation. Now, as the airspace will soon get busy, won't this increase the number of new cases in the country, knowing well that it was through that means that Nigeria recorded its index case? Now that international flights are going to resume, will this lead to the calling back of those sacked workers? Well, with these questions, guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be discussing shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background up. Now, this morning we're expecting the Director General of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCAA, that's Captain Musa Nuhu, to join us via Skype from Lagos. We're still trying to get the connections sorted out. But once we have him, of course, he will join in the conversation. In the meantime, we have with us here an aviation analyst, Godi Ike. God Ike, delight to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. Good to have you, Godi. So let's shoot ahead. First of all, was this shift expected?
One can safely say yes. Yes. The whole thing that is required for this flight to take place is quite complex, and one is never sure of not just being complex. Well, it comes from different departments. It's not purely an aviation thing. You've got the those that are monitoring the pandemic and giving out information about activities and who are setting the protocols that should be observed, and who want to ensure that in all this that will keep the health of the nation. And so if for you to really harmonize all the parties and and have things going smoothly, it's not an easy task. So I expected and suspected that they might not meet up the date of 29th. And as a matter of fact, the date of 5th is still hanging in the balance, if you ask me. And by the way, also realize that the business that's going on now is a business of what you give to us, we give back to you. It's a business of reciprocity. If a nation, negotiates too hard for us to accept, it means that we can't exchange visits with those, that kind of nation. So nations must agree and harmonize their positions before flights can take place. So it's quite complex.
Give us a sense of that complexity.
Yes.
Of flight resumptions amidst a situation such as we have at hand.
First of all, as a standard practice, in the aviation sector, you have what is known as BASA, the Bilateral Air Services Agreement. That document is, what ties the relationship amongst countries. For instance, if Nigeria wants to begin flight operations with, say, United Kingdom, assuming we didn't have one, and want to, begin one. First of all, is that the, representatives of the two nations must meet and discuss what you can do on both sides. What you
terms
can
of scheduling,
instead of flight scheduling, instead of number of touchdowns that you can do, in terms of what you can do, locally. Can you land at point A within the same country and then leave the point A to another point B within? Those kind of negotiations, so you must agree on them. And then that's what's captured in the BASA, the Bilateral Air Services Agreement. And then once that is set and both parties are comfortable with the agreement, then that's when you say that you can fly into that country and vice versa. And they can also fly into this. And of course, everybody's expected to obey the rules as set out by BASA. Now, the corona pandemic brought a new dimension, and that is every nation of the world is doing everything it can to keep its own citizens safe and alive. And so rules are made, what you can do and what you cannot do, medically speaking. Now, you find a situation where some countries do not take as seriously as others do of what's going on. Some countries, for instance, in some countries they insist that you must have your, I'm just giving an example, face mask. And in others, even within the same country, for instance, in America, generally it's said that it's safer to have your mask on, but some states say they can't impose them. That the people can, if you want to wear for your safety, fine. If you don't want to wear, you have your freedom to choose what you want to do.
And they are seeing the consequences.
That's correct.
Spike in numbers of infections and fatalities.
Wonderful. Now, bring it now to what we're discussing. If you want to travel now from, or rather, America wants to travel to Nigeria. The state where that airline operates from is one of the reckless states that says, we don't care about this mask stuff and some of the protocols set out. It's a free society. If you think it's good for you, use them. If you think it's not good for you, you are free to not to. And then Nigeria happens to be a country that says, listen, it's compulsory. You must have it. You must operate, in this fashion if you must visit us. Now, can you imagine now you have an airline that's had a relationship with Nigeria that's been flying in and out, and we've been flying in and out, and it happens to be such a state that is reckless. What do you think those that are managing our situation will do? Would they allow flights from that kind of state? The answer is definitely no.
Well, go to UK.
Yeah.
Just before we return again to the specifics of resumption of regular international flights, even on a limited scale, what do we know about the global picture of the resumption of international flights? Because we do know that even with the widespread lockdown, there were still cargo flights.
Yes.
There were still emergency flights.
Correct.
But in terms of passenger traffic, virtually a no-no.
That's right.
Across international airspace. What is the situation now? Are countries allowing flights in and out? What do we know in Europe, in Asia, and the Americas?
That's not a standard practice anywhere now in the world. It's some countries are saying at the moment we can't allow certain listed countries to come in, because they believe that those countries are not doing enough, to curb the effects of the pandemic. And Nigeria, for instance, is saying it's purely a business of reciprocity. If you don't want us, we don't want you. That's the attitude, for instance, in Nigeria. And so the situation is quite tricky and quite complex. What I see is that constant negotiations we continue. And then, of course, nations of the world will weigh what's happening to their economy as against what's happening to the health of the people. And at any point in time, you think that the need to have the economy running is now running higher than the issue of health. Then you begin to consider, for instance, again, if you have a nation that's been reckoning so much money by relating with Nigeria, coming in here to take what we have in terms of raw materials and then and all that stuff, and then and they have this attitude that we are not doing enough. I'm not saying we're not doing enough, but I'm just saying, for instance, if they have that attitude that we're not doing enough, and therefore they won't let us come, fly into their territory. And then with the principle we already have put out there, the government of Nigeria is not pretending about it. The Honorable Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, has made it clear to the world that our business is business of reciprocity. If you want us, we want you. If you don't want us, we don't want you.
Yes. I'm slightly unclear about the underpinning rationale for our official policy and the resumption of limited international flights. Is it being taken as largely, say, an aviation matter? To say, yes, if you don't allow us to fly into your country, we will not allow you to fly into our country. That's aviation. Or is the overriding consideration one of public health? Assuming I don't think we have direct flights now between Nigeria and Brazil. In the past, there was Varig Airlines that you could fly directly from Lagos to Rio.
Yes.
But if you look at the horrendous numbers coming out of Brazil, in terms of the caseload of infections and even fatalities arising from the infections, if Brazil were to say, and assuming we had direct air linkages with Brazil, Brazil says, no, we will allow you to fly in. Are we also going to say, Brazil, you can also fly in?
Very, very smart one, Kenneth. Very, very smart one that you just raised there. But let me also tell you what I know and that what I see is as the way this is working at the moment. If you notice, there's no time the aviation ministry, that is to say minister and his directors, come out as purely aviation to address issues. If you notice, all the time, addressing the world and addressing Nigerians happens during the briefing of the
PTF.
The PTF, led by the
Secretary of the Government of the Federation.
That's correct. And of course, the people who are in charge of the health in, the
NCDC.
The NCDC, yes, the NCDC. Now, you would notice that at all times, the different sectors of, and especially aviation, it's on that platform that you get information. What does that tell you? It tells you that the aviation department cannot exclude itself from the system and then go solo and say, okay, we're happy with these individuals, they're allowing us in, so we can allow them in. No. There again, you would observe that the aviation side was actually ready for flight to resume tomorrow, 29th. But on the medical side, they made it clear that they were not ready. There were a few things they wanted to be sure that they are in place before they let this in. So that answers your question. It's not purely a decision that's going to be made by aviation versus aviation. The medical sector of the PTF would be sure that there is safety in the system before those kind of flights will be allowed.
Godi, I understand. I mean, your response is solid, but I was just wondering, as I was trying to get us to interrogate the nature of the reciprocity. I mean, in international relations, reciprocity is clear. If you allow us to fly in, we will also allow you to fly in. What do we know today about Italy? I wouldn't know whether Alitalia still flies into Lagos. What do we know about Italy? One of the heavily impacted countries. What do we know about Spain? One of the heavily impacted countries. Is it Sabina or I don't know. I think they've gone into some alliance now with some other airline.
That's correct.
So are we going to allow flights? If you look at what's happening in the UK, are we going to say that the airlines coming in from the UK can also go in? So these are some of the things that even in the US, the hubs that we do get flights into Nigeria, usually in New York, I think Atlanta, yes. I'm not sure whether they're sending direct flight from Houston or I think Delta flies out of
Houston.
Delta flies out of one of those hubs. But you see what is happening in Florida. You see what is happening in California. These were states that seemed lax in the first instance and didn't take the requisite precautions. So how do you underline that to say, look, yes, you are coming in, do your negative test before you come. So if I don't know, that's part of the clarity.
I think the simplest way to really handle this, I mean, mentally speaking, the simplest way to handle it is to, first of all, trust that the PTF is doing everything in the interest of Nigeria to protect Nigeria. And so even if the aviation department says, okay, we're happy with these individuals, they are allowing us to come in, and so it makes sense that we allow them to come in. But the medical side, the NCDC would say, no, we are worried about this and that, and therefore this won't happen. And that was why at the initial time I described it as very complex. The situation is quite complex. It's not a straitjacket thing, and we will never expect it to be a straitjacket thing because they are working as a team. And I think in that team, the medical side appears to have an upper hand because this postponement of resumption, that was supposed to take place tomorrow. And then pushed to the 5th was not as a result of the aviation side not being ready. No, it was a medical, side that said a few things are still not clear and a few things are still not in place. I want to be sure. And so that should answer your question that we should really trust the individuals that are working for the nation to make sure we are all safe, and hope and believe that they will always do what is in the interest of the nation and what's the interest of the safety of Nigerians. However, some of us will continue to watch and look out. Anytime we think they are becoming a little careless or becoming a little reckless in the bid, we will always scream out. If nobody else will, trust me, I will always do.
Do you think the sector is in a haste to resume flights? Because if you consider the caseload, the global caseload of the pandemic, I mean, it's very high. Though we're fortunate not to have high fatality rate and all that, but outside Europe and the Americas, it's quite high. So do you think we're in a haste to actually open our skies for international flights? Again, bearing in mind that at first the index case came from outside the country.
From outside the country. Yes. Again, that is the complexity in this whole thing. If you ask me, the airplane on its own would not cause infections. That is, people flying within the airplane, because I do know and understand the system and how it works in there. I've had people saying to me, a whole lot of people over the week called and said, God, we heard you saying that it's safe to fly, and you made description of this the air conditioning system in the airplane. I said, yes, I hold my position in that. It's correct, because the fear is that we are not doing social distancing, within the, I need to explain this so that we can understand this a little better, and our viewers will also understand. They fear that because there's no social distancing or physical distancing within the cabin of the airplane, that it's likely that some asymptomatic individual sitting next to you may sneeze, cough, or speak, and then these droplets, come off and then come across to the next individual. And I say to you, for what I know about the system, is not likely to happen. Why is that? The air conditioning system in the airplane has a part of it that has to do with suction, and suction is simply a movement of either particles, liquid, or whatever from a high pressure zone to a low pressure zone. Naturally, for instance, if you seal up this studio that we are in right now and then pressurize it, and so the studio is under pressure, that makes the outside of the studio of a lower pressure, any particle or liquid or whatever that is existing in this place, once it finds any opening, leaves the space naturally, without any machine or any pump or anything, naturally. And that's why, for instance, because the cabin of an airplane is pressurized, because the creator of the world put the atmospheric pressure here on Earth to sustain our lungs. The reason you're able to do this is because of the atmospheric pressure existing here. Now, if you go up into the skies about 25,000, 30,000 feet, the atmospheric pressure thins out. It's not as high as it's here. And if you go even further, it disappears completely. That's when you say you are in space, and you find that you're floating. You can't even stand on anything and walk anymore. You just float. And that's why when an airplane is in flight and there is either a broken window or a fall off of one of the emergency doors, you know what happens? If you're not strapped strongly with your seat belt, the pressure lifts you off your seat, hangs you in the air, even with your 70 or 80 kg weight. It lifts you, hangs you, and takes you all the way to that opening that depressurizes the cabin and sucks you out. That's what happens. So in that same fashion, those droplets that may come off somebody's, as soon as they get into the space, they leave, because they are provisions for suction.
Okay, yeah, got it. Well, thanks a lot. Very interesting, very interesting description there.
Yes.
Earlier we had indicated that we'll be joined for this conversation by the Director General of NCAA, that's the Civil Aviation Authority, Captain Musa Nuhu. We have him now with us via Zoom. Captain Musa Nuhu, delighted to have you with us on the program. But very quickly, we've touched on a number of issues. I wouldn't know whether you've had the opportunity of listening on some of the issues that we've raised with Godi Ike. Namely, the basis for the resumption of regular international flights, even on a limited scale. We understand the federal government says, like, this will be on the basis of reciprocity. You allow us fly into your country, we allow you fly into our country. What else governs this, or what else will govern this? Because I've raised the issue of health considerations. Assuming, and today we do not have direct air connections between Nigeria and Brazil, we used to have. If Brazil allowed us to fly into Brazil, would we also allow Brazil to fly into Nigeria, considering the number of infections relating to COVID-19 in that country? Spain, heavily impacted. Italy, heavily impacted. On the African continent, South Africa has the highest caseload as well as leading the board in terms of fatalities. So what exactly is afoot in terms of the resumption of international flights 1 week hence?
Thank you very much, and good morning. Thank you for having me here, and my apologies for being late. There are some mix-up about the timing. Well, on the presumption internationals, the issue of reciprocity, it's not the issue of you ban my aircraft, what some countries have done, have banned the citizens of other countries from going to their country. So that's what we're going to do. If you don't allow the citizens of Nigeria to fly into your country, will not allow the citizens of your country to come to Nigeria. Some other countries have restrictions, like UK, you go there, I think you do a test, and you go into quarantine for 2 weeks. So different countries have different protocols for international flights. So we are looking at what other countries have done, and that's exactly what we do, especially those that do not allow the citizens or residents of Nigeria to go into that country. That's exactly what we are going to do. And on the issues of countries with a high prevalence of COVID-19, that's a decision, for the health authorities, but we have put measures in place to mitigate this possible carryover of this disease to Nigeria. And what we've done is you are required to do a COVID test between 48 and 72 hours before your arrival in Nigeria. Then 1 week later, you do a follow-up test in Nigeria to ensure that you are not showing any symptoms. But my understanding, I'm not a health expert, and please don't hold me to this. My understanding, the greater danger we have now is the community spread, but still, we have to be very careful when we open international airports to passengers, not to allow a serious inflow of sick people who are infected with coronavirus to come into our country, to already burden an overburdened health system. That's the reason why this protocols have been put in place. It's not 100% perfect, but it captures, from my understanding, if you do the test before you depart and you do the test 1 week later, it captures about 94-95%. So even if you are going to miss, it's very little number. Nothing is 100%, but we'll put mitigating measures to kind of manage the situation.
What measure are we putting in place in terms of the readiness of the port health officials, to be able to detect any escape, when visitors arrive the country?
There's an online platform that's been developed. So before you even depart, you go to the online platform, you fill all your information, your health history, your travel history, your contact details, and any other necessary information as might be required by the health authorities. Then you pay for the test you are going to do in Nigeria. The test you do 7 days after arrival in Nigeria. Then you will be printed, you have a receipt with a barcode. Then you need to do another test 48 to 72 hours, preferably before you depart to Nigeria. When you arrive in Nigeria, the whole idea of filling that form is you eliminate the physical filling, manual filling of forms you get into Nigeria, which creates a lot of crowd and agitation by passengers. You take that out. So when you land, it goes straight through the port health authorities for the temperature check. They will ask you a few questions and observe you for symptoms of coronavirus. If anybody's suspected symptom is taken aside and moved on to the relevant department for further checks and possible quarantine if there's any confirmed symptom or case of coronavirus. But for those who go pass through the process, they go through the normal immigration customs, declare they leave the airport, then they are required to be in self-quarantine for 1 week. After 1 week, they go do a second test. Our understanding is the incubation period starts between 5 and 12 days. So you do an incubation test within that period. You do a COVID test, if to see any symptoms of corona. If we are negative, you go free. If you are positive, depending on the seriousness, you either go into isolation or you go into a treatment center. So I know a lot of people say, okay, are you sure people are going to come back and do the second test? What's going to happen? Your passport details is part of the information that you fill, and you'll be given a period of time to submit your second COVID test in 19. If you don't do that, there's a travel ban for a period and extended than the period that will put on your passport. So you can travel for an extensive time, which you believe will be an incentive enough for people to go do that second test in Nigeria. And this second test will only be accepted at accredited and certified labs in Nigeria by the NCDC and the port health authorities.
All right, Captain Woods, thank you very much. I mean, shall we say on paper, I'm not being cynical, on paper all of this sounds right, but we do know we had some issues almost 6 months ago when, as some persons had indicated, we should have shut our borders. We allowed our borders open for some weeks, and all of a sudden we started seeing a rise in the numbers of infections. And here we are again seeking to reopen our borders. That's not land borders now, air travels, and the risk that is inherent in all of this. If you recall, as some persons were coming in from abroad, while we still had the window open before international flights were closed, some of the information that they provided was completely misleading. So how do we deal with instances, even with this advanced passenger information that you are referring to, that perhaps an individual might not just be recklessly careless as to the information he or she provides, and then we are relying on the same individuals to say, look, self-isolate for 7 days or undergo a test. A number of those persons about 6 months or so ago just disappeared into the community, which is why we started having community transmission of the coronavirus. Is this a distinct possibility? And if so, how are the authorities getting ready to combat this?
Well, an issue of health matters is an issue of collective responsibilities. You cannot expect government or policemen to be with each and every individual to make sure each and every individual goes into self-isolation. It is a matter of responsibility. We must take full responsibility for our health. You cannot expect imagine if you have 4,000 passengers come into Nigeria in a day. The system is just not feasible for 4,000 people to be monitored to ensure they go into isolation for 1 week. That's a system. I mean, we just have to take full responsibilities for our action, and anybody caught will be penalized. But I've been asked, why don't government put them in quarantine? If you put people in quarantine, you can, if you do the maths, it's billions and billions of naira. Government does not have the funds to put everybody in self-quarantine. Most countries require self-quarantine. Government cannot put in enforced quarantine. The resources are not just there. And the comfort we get is those who have done the COVID-19's pre-departure within the stipulated period. Statistics show it's about 5% or less that of those that turn out positive during the second test in time. So the figure has been narrowed down. And if you do the second test within the 7 days of arrival in area, you further capture most of those people that 5% that might have gotten positive the second time around. So the measures are there to minimize. Yes, you don't want even one person with COVID-19 coming into the country, but there is no system in this entire world that's 100% positive. Every country you go, they have some percentage that slip through the system. But the important thing is the mitigating measures that are put in place, the pre-arrival COVID-19 within the stipulated period, which eliminates a significant part of those that might be infected. And the second one, to capture those that might have turned positive since their test before arriving in Nigeria.
Okay, Captain Nuhu, I just like to ask really, in whose interest is this resumption of international flights in the first place? Because as some people would say, at a time when we were having, less caseload, we shut down, total shutdown. Now that we seem to be having increase in, daily or weekly metric caseload, we are reopening our international flights.
So what was the question?
Whose interest really is this resumption of international flights?
Yes. Well, international flights, we have to find a way to resume international flights. We need the balance between the health well-being of the country and the economic well-being of the country. It's a balance that each and every country needs to find for itself. Every country does its own risk assessments and comes out with measures to try to balance it. No country can continue shut down in perpetuity until vaccine is found and the coronavirus is dealt with. We just have to find a way. You can't just close down, and that's why you put these measures in place to mitigate the risk. The risk assessment have been done by the health authorities, and they come out with measures which they believe through modeling, which they believe will eliminate most, if not all, the coronavirus affected people coming into the country. And by the way, the biggest problem we have right now is community transmission. And I'm sure if you go to a lot of our cities, I've been to cities where face mask, and also I'm a stranger. Nobody wears his face mask. I think that's the biggest danger to us right now, is community transmission.
Captain Musa Nuhu, you've already explained the basis for the reciprocity. If I recast what you said, that countries that have indicated that they would not allow Nigerian citizens to fly into their own countries, citizens of such countries will also not be allowed to fly into our country. I'm just wondering, is citizen sufficient? I mean, if those countries took their decision on the basis of citizenship, is that sufficient? Couldn't we possibly have looked at, say, residency, to say where you reside? I mean, if assuming you are Spanish and you reside in Morocco, and Morocco has a lower caseload than Spain itself, and you want to fly Air Maroc to Lagos, would you be denied permission to land because you are Spanish?
Could you say that again? I didn't quite catch your question.
Okay, well, you got the preface to my question, that namely the basis for the planned reciprocity is citizenship. That is to say, if country A says that Nigerian citizens cannot and should not fly internationally into their own country, Nigeria would in turn say citizens of country A should also not fly into our country. And I'm wondering, I said, could we also have considered residency as a more critical factor in debarring any person from getting to our country on account of the high prevalence rate of coronavirus in the place where such a person resides, rather than his nationality simplicity?
Okay, resident, usually it's when they say we ban the citizens of a country, the residents are not included. A lot of European that allow citizens, when they say citizens of country A and residents in our own country, usually allow the official residents in your own country back to that country. Residents are not usually included in this travel ban. So residents are allowed to return to their places of residence, even if they are not citizens of that country. And now one of the issues you mentioned, there unfortunately quite a few number of countries, especially in Europe, that have put a ban on Nigeria. They have their cases of coronavirus is much higher than that of Nigeria. So on the health cases, it doesn't make any sense why you will ban the citizens of our country when you have I'm more likely to catch coronavirus when I go to your country rather than you coming to Nigeria. So it just doesn't add up.
All right, thank you very much, Captain Musa Nuhu. Godike, just before we wrap this up and then also take a look at the twists that have come. You've listened to the explanations provided by the Director General of the NCCA. What more would you like to add?
Oh, well, I already told you from inception that the situation is quite complex, tricky, and difficult to deal with. He pointed out about the balance with the economy and the health of the nation. That we need to strike a balance. If you recall, I mentioned that already. That nations would weigh which one benefits them more at every point in time in making that decision. And so I do not see how else we're going to be able to deal with this except to say shut our borders, relate with no one, and hold up in here. And the question is, if we make that choice, are we going to survive as a nation? Are we going to survive as a people? Are we, what's the word I'm looking for now?
Self-sufficient?
Self-sufficient, that's the word. Are we now self-sufficient enough to say to all the people who are promoting this ugly virus, so please stay there, we don't want you, and please don't expect us because we're not coming? Can we really say that? And if the answer is no, then we do what is the best we can under the circumstance we find ourselves. It's quite complex, very tricky, very difficult.
I don't know.
difficult.
Let's listen to the tweets that we have.
Okay.
Jack Solomon says, getting it right on the resumption of international flights of the Nigerian aviation sector is very sacrosanct towards control of the spread of the pandemic. Now, no doubt emphasis should be placed on the observation of all the safety and technical guidelines as prescribed by global and health authorities. Nothing more, nothing less.
Chris Simeon says the aviation ministry must ensure that passengers from foreign countries that come in are well screened and they should comply with the laid down rules and guidelines.
P.O. Yebanji, this is a case of sadness and joy. Joy for returning of normalcy, sad for fear of unknown. The attention of the nation should be on the Port Health Authority, immigration officers, and the custom, among others. We cannot afford their failure this time around. May God help Nigeria.
Comrade Alhaji Ngala, resumption of international flights is a welcome development as it will boost the economy.
All right, I think
Jones
those are the ones.
Jones Ferrari is saying that I don't agree with the reopening of resumption of flights. You don't reopen flights. With the resumption of flights, with lockdown everywhere when we had less cases, and we are reopening when cases are high.
Okay, Festus Akiboyewa says, when flights eventually resume, Nigerians should only travel abroad when it's essential to do so. And FG must not hesitate to bring national control measures at short notice to minimize the risks to Nigerians.
That's a very valid point there. Eno Ayuk Edwin, opening up international airspace is essentially critical to reviving the economy and preventing job losses. However, tighter COVID-19 protocols must be in place and not compromised to serve individuals or otherwise. Okay, so those are the tweets that we can accommodate in the meantime. As we indicated, we have a second topic for conversation. Here with us in the Abuja studios, we would like to appreciate aviation analyst Godike. Godike, thank you very much there for your contributions to our discussion this morning.
Thank you, Ken.
Via Zoom,
Claire, thank you, sir.
Via Zoom, we were joined by the Director General of the NCAA, that's the Civil Aviation Authority, Captain Musa Nuhu. DJ, our delight having you on the program this morning.
Thank you very much. As Mr. Godi said, it's a very, very complex situation. There is no simple solution to it. And what has been done is going to be continuously reviewed. I want to make it clear to the traveling part, it's a partial resumption. We're not opening airports fully to everybody. It's a controlled opening so that we can control the system, have things in control, And as things review, we might increase or decrease depending on it's a continuous process that we review. We're not just going and that's it. The situation is going to be monitored. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, and best wishes as you reopen the airspace partially for regular international flights. That's just in about a week. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with the peace pact signed in troubled southern Kaduna.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, featuring great personalities from all walks of life. Expository interview with a young TV presenter who shows passion on what she does, Morayo Afolabi Brown of TVC. Pick a copy of this compendium of mind-blowing stories and get abreast with issues as regards media convergence, leadership, health, star profiles, star programs, fashion, sports, human angle stories, and lots more. Meet some media professionals within our space who have paid their dues in no small ways. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
Now let's turn our attention to southern Kaduna after recurrent violence that has led to the loss of lives and properties in that part of the country. The Atiop, Fulani and Hausa communities have agreed to live in peace by signing a peace pact. We have joining us to discuss the Southern Kaduna Peace Pact, Most Reverend Josiah Ido Ferron. He is the Secretary General, Anglican Consultative Council, and Chairman, Kaduna Peace Pact. He joins us via Skype from London. Hello, thank you, Most Reverend, for joining us from London.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we also have joining us from our Kaduna Network Center. We have two guests there. First, Malam Yande Ahmed Mairiga, Sarakim Fulani Sabungeri Bypass in Kaduna. He's a retired Assistant Director, Environmental Health and National Eye Center in Kaduna, and also Chairman Mugba Fulbe Development Association. We'd like to thank you for joining us from Kaduna.
Yes, and thank you for having me.
All right. Of course, seated with him there in the Kaduna Network Center is Suleiman Gora Makama Atiap. It's the community leader of the Atiap Chiefdom, Chairman Gora Khan Peace and Development Committee. Suleiman Gora, a pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Right, so let's return to London, where we introduced a while ago the Most Reverend Josiah Ido Ferron, who is chairman of the Kaduna Peace Pact. Most Reverend Josiah Ferron, give us a sense, why did you undertake this, and how difficult was it to get the parties to endorse the Peace Pact?
I didn't quite get that question. Sorry, I think there is a break in communication.
Most Reverend Josiah, I'm asking, sir, why did you get into this and how challenging was it to get the parties to endorse the peace pact?
Well, I would have been happier if my executive vice, with whom we actually discussed, had been on this program, and she did assure me she was going to be part of it. However, it was not an easy journey. She and the other commissioner, Hajia Khadija, had series of consultations behind the scenes, which eventually culminated into the peace agreement that was signed on the 22nd, which was last week, Saturday of this month.
I'm sorry, we appear to have a freeze there, or... I was just wondering, but just Most Reverend Josiah, you said you wished you had your vice available on this program, but unfortunately we do not have her here with us. We have other guests who are also here. But the other leg of my question had to do with how challenging was it to get the parties together, considering what had played out in recent past and indeed not so recent past in terms of the bloodletting and destruction of property?
Okay, now I got the second part of the question. Well, first and foremost, everybody in that particular part of the state and the entire people of Kaduna State, we commiserate and we feel the loss of so many lives, property destroyed, and people not being able to actually go to their farms or to go to their places of work. Everybody felt, look, enough was enough. That was one thing. Number two, as a result of the various meetings with the various stakeholders, we were able, that is the commission and some other civil service organizations, were able to bring the factions to a point of accepting the need for a truce so that the killings will stop, the destruction of property will stop, and we will be able to sort of sit, dialogue, and find ways and means of bringing about harmony within our community. So it was hard work, but everybody feels it's enough. Enough is enough. Let's sit together and sort out this problem, which is an ongoing problem.
Most Reverend, just before we bring in our other guests from our Kaduna Network Center, I'd just like us to look at the law of relativity by Einstein and recall that there have been similar peace pacts in the past, also involving some of these communities and all that. So what is this particular peace pact advocating? Are we repeating the same process all over again?
Now, as I said, what is the difference? The difference is in our expectation. Look, in every situation, there has to be a commitment to an attitudinal change. That's number one. And we are perceiving that there is a commitment to having a change of attitude. And under this change of attitude, we are again hoping that the concept of common secular security will now be brought to the forefront of our relating together. And by that I mean that what is thought to be needed for the conviction of one community to flourish is actually bound up with what is needed for the convictions of the other community to flourish. We have been able to put that on the table, and we are committed to pushing it, because history has taught us that one can best defend oneself by defending others. We've not been seeing this in the past, and we are hoping as a commission to promote that spirit. That is, the best way to defend my community is to defend the others, so that together we will be able to work on what we have agreed upon. That's what makes the difference, and the commission is committed to promote that, to propagate it, and to actualize it. I repeat, it is the concept of common secular security.
All right, Most Reverend Josiah, thank you very much. Just before we bring in two guests in Kaduna one more time, you've used the word commission. To which commission are you referring, so that we get it very clear?
Commission.
Yeah,
Kaduna
which commission is that?
State Peace Commission, of which I am chair, and that's the reason for my being on this program. And that was why I said earlier on, my executive chair was actually expected to have partnered with me on this program.
All right, thank you very much. So now let's go over to our Kaduna Network Center, where we earlier introduced two gentlemen, Malam Yande Ahmad Meriga, Sarikin Fulani, Sabungeri Bypass in Kaduna, as well as Suleiman Gura Makaman Atiap, the community leader of Atiap Chiefdom. Gentlemen, you've listened to the Most Reverend Josiah outlined the issues in the Peace Pact. And apart from having common secular security, he also said that a key ingredient in the Peace Pact is attitudinal change. And I ask you, gentlemen, what attitude needs to change?
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much. I think the esteemed reverend gentlemen have said it all. But I want to go back to one of the things that is good about this particular peace initiative: community ownership. Government agencies and so many people over the years have made effort in order to bring this kind of peace by calling all the parties together to sit down and discuss the way forward. But this time, this particular peace effort is developed, engineered, and by the communities themselves, under the leadership of the Ogwa Atiap in Zangon Kataf local government of Southern Kaduna. Immediately this crisis started, the first thing he did was to call a meeting of his council and members of the different tribes that live within the chiefdom in order to open discussions as to how do we overcome this particular problem. The next step he did was to reach out to those in authority so that we will be able to carry them along to assist the community in this particular peace process that he initiated. It is in line with this that he got the support of the elected representative of the people within that community. There is Honorable Amos Magaji, who is the member representing Zangon Kataf Jaba constituency at the Federal House of Representatives. He, together with the Kaduna State, with the Zango constituency representative in the Kaduna State House Assembly, with the chairman of the local government. These are the structures that we have on ground, recognized by law, recognized by government, and recognized even by our tradition and custom as leaders within this community. These particular people that I mentioned sat down together with Royal Highness and started the process of this particular peace initiative. It is after we have gone far in our attempt to develop a framework in which we want to approach this peace that we reach out and sought the support of the Kaduna State government, the Nigerian Army, the DSS, and the Nigerian Police Force. And all these agencies gave His Royal Highness the maximum support he needed. First and foremost, we had a problem at that time where we had people who were completely scattered in different parts of the state. Some of them have run into IDPs camps, and we needed to bring them to the table to discuss. But our brothers, the Hausas, the Fulanis, and even the Ketabs, they expressed fear as to the security to give room for all these parties to sit down. And we are lucky that the commander in charge of the Operation Lafia Doli, Major General Konko, Commissioner of Police, and the Director of Police assured us, together with the Executive Governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasiru Ahmed Irfai, that they were going to give all the necessary backing for us to embark on this. Then the next step that he signed was for us to reach to the Peace Commission, who have been doing a very beautiful work behind the scene, trying to encourage us that the best that can happen is for us to sit down and discuss. Everybody will agree that the reason for this conflict is because we hardly talk to ourselves. Where there is no communication, there is no understanding. So the best that happens is that we have open communication. And this particular peace process is something that we have started. We are not saying that that particular meeting or that Saturday have given us peace, but it has opened a window for us to institutionalize peace within our environment. That is the little I can say as an introduction to this discussion.
Thank you, Suleiman Gora, Makama Atiep. Let me bring in now the Malam Ahmad Mairiga, Sarike Fulani, Sabongeri bypass. The Most Reverend Josiah Idu Ferron talked about the concept of common secular security as the basis for this peace pact, and of course the change of attitude that he talked about. From your point of view, what do you really understand by this common concept of secular security?
Thank you very much. Well, in aligning with what the two speakers have said, and in conformity with the question you asked, I want to say that from the process and where we are now, automatically expresses and explained what the Most Reverend refers to as secular security. Because in the absence of that secular security, certainly we wouldn't have been seated in the studio here to talk something of common interest, something that will bring peace, something that will lead to reconciliation, and something that will bring this community back to what it used to be more than centuries or even 2 centuries or probably 3 ago. I was born in Samaru Kataf 61 years ago. And permit me to inform Nigerians watching and hearing this program, on those that will be privileged to be told or see it maybe through the YouTube, etc., that I was the signatory to the Fulani community in that communique. By implication, I signed that document on behalf of all Fulani of Nigeria, not even Kaduna State, in what? Seeking peace. Because there is no two words to that word peace. Peace has no alternative word than peace itself. And violence have no alternative word than violence itself. And peace leads to complete unity, progress, and interdependent on each other for all that one needs as a human being. And from the angle of we the Fulani, you know very well, we don't ask anything from government. Even in Zangon Katav, where we are domiciled and elsewhere, the Fulani man's bank account or his CBN is the cow. His ATM is the little chickens, the goats that gathers around that when he has a little or one or two problem, he sells. The Fulani man, wherever he is, has never claimed land, particularly where we were born and brought up. What we ask for is the grass, which is a natural phenomenon that is provided by God. Give us where we'll graze, where our cows will feed, where the goats will drink, and that is all we ask for. And from time immemorial, we've lived with these communities, and in the peradventure where there is problem, where these cows, encroaches into people's farms, I mean, there was perfect understanding between the communities and the leaders of people that were, whose crops were, chopped up. And negotiations are entered in, and payment is made. Then the question is, what happened? And that is why the question of the most reverend of, community policing and bringing us together matters. I want to assure you, I am by training an environmentalist and a public health scientist. We look at human beings, we look at the environment, and we look at what is in the aquatic life. If you go to my area, Coral Zangon Katam now, from an ecological point of view, from an environmental point of view, and even from a public point of view, you will discover that we did not do harm to only us, we the human beings. We have offended the soil, we have offended the land, we have offended the aquatic life. Aquatic means those things that lives in water. What is left is for us to emulate, and that was principally what geared me towards signing that document on behalf of the Fulani people, because eminent Nigerians, you can see the gentleman that spoke from London, he's a man of respect, a man of eminent respect all over. The gentleman that is with me here we attended the same secondary school, and he was my senior. I don't greet him standing. Therefore, we need to come together, we need this peace. We look at what happened in other countries. Take, for example, the apartheid. Nelson Mandela was in prison for about 37 years. When he came out, what happened? Those words such as apartheid, colonialization, dehumanization, etc., were the key words in South Africa. In the case of Southern Kaduna today, the key words are attack, reprisal, indigene, settler. Let us collectively bring these words together and fight them to stand still, so that we'll go back to Southern Kaduna and believe it is our own history, it is our own place, and those people who believe that it cannot happen, by the grace of God, it will happen. Peace shall return in Southern Kaduna, and that is why I am here. And I want to stand tall. Let posterity judge me positively for signing that document on behalf of the Fulbe, and we'll continue to pursue it until one day again we resume our normal life in Southern Kaduna, where everybody loves and belongs to each other, regardless of tribe, religion, and any difference that matters, which is available and attainable in all communities all over the world.
Thank you very much there, Ahmad Meriga. Very sweet words coming from you both gentlemen in our Kaduna Network Center. And I'm sure that residents and indigents of Kaduna State will be mostly delighted by what they are hearing from you in Kaduna, as well as from the most Reverend Josiah Ferron with us via Skype from London. But I still want to stay with you gentlemen in Kaduna. And the question again is an open one going to both of you. But first, Suleiman Gora. Suleiman Gora, I mean, for those of us who are outsiders, and indeed for some insiders, at the time when you had, as it were, the peak of the conflict in southern Kaduna, there were always frequent references to previous reports of judicial commissions of inquiry and the need to implement the recommendations of those reports and commissions, and indeed previous visitations. What wasn't right about what went on before that has now been worked out, as it were, by the communities, which now gives rise to these high hopes that peace at last would now flourish in southern Kaduna?
Thank you very much. Let me use Zangon Kataf as an example. After the 1992 crisis in Zangon Kataf, between the Hausa and the Kataf, or Tiap community, as it's called, there were so many commissions set up. There were about 3, and there were courts that were set up, and so many decisions were taken. But Governor Jafari Isa at that particular time realized that whatever effort done by government, it will be almost impossible to achieve the desired peace within that area. And went further to establish, even after the committees that were set up, the Rahila Kujo Committee and Usman Maazu Committee, he organized what we called the Zangon Kataf Peace Accord, which was headed by the former governor of the state, late Air Vice Marshal Usman Maazu. And the whole essence was to take this peace effort to the community. A lot of decisions were taken, and it was now left for government to implement these decisions. It is agreed that some of the decisions that were taken were implemented. That gave birth to the establishment of most of the chiefdoms that you find today in southern Kaduna. That led to the granting of a constituency to the Hausa community in Zangon Kataf. That led to the giving the Zangon Kataf community a district head that represents them within the Tiap chiefdom. And that also led to the bringing in the Fulanis and the Hausas into the traditional council of the Tiap chiefdom. These are people which is the highest decision-making body, and everybody was represented in it. But there were a few issues that were remaining. That's the issue in respect of land and some little ones. The late Ogwatiap and the present Ogwatiap made effort in order to see that these issues are resolved amicably within the communities. They appointed committees under the distinguished leadership of retired Air Vice Marshal Shekari, who was one-time military governor of Kaduna and a prominent son of the chiefdom, and brought in both Hausa and other communities into that committee for those results. I am fortunate to be a member of that particular committee. We sat down for nearly 2 to 3 years where we did deliberations. We were able to visit communities and discuss on the issue of land. Areas that were discovered to belong to the Hausas, we agreed that they will be returned to them. Those that belong to Kataf will be given to them. What we had in that report, you will not believe it, that led to this current crisis, that led to this killing, was just about 2% of what was remaining, up to nearly 100% of the implementation we are talking about. Being a community leader, a lot of us that sit outside, as we say, people who are outside, the assumption is that these things are there, and people talk about it. But those of us who are the grassroots, who knows what is happening, these efforts, they have been there, and that is why, as we say, government must learn to follow things to the logical conclusions. When agreements are signed and the communities are willing to carry their own, and the government has a role to play, the government must play that role. Sad to say, as a retired civil servant, I have observed over the years, not only just in Kaduna or Southern Kaduna, but generally in Nigeria, when we have a case like this one, we all talk about it. We all make the noise. We all make the suggestions. But once we feel that the storm is calm, then we completely forget that we needed to make sure that we strengthen the boat so that when the storm comes back, it will not be able to rock the boat or even capsize it. That is the situation we continue to find ourselves. But like I say, this time we are taking ownership. We are not waiting for anybody. There are institutions. The biggest institution we have in Southern Kaduna today are the traditional leadership. Once they take leadership and they realize that everybody is theirs and they call us together to sit down, we will do, which is what the Ogwatiap has done. I remember at the peace conference, when he spoke, his first statement is that he said, we are all guilty.
Yeah.
We have all killed. We have all maimed. But we are not here to sit down and trade blames and say it is you that first started killing me, or it is me that you that started killing. Let us sit down and say that have we done what is right? That he was calling us to sit down so that we'll be able to say, okay, we have made these mistakes. Where do we go from here? When we sit down and we start talking about history of 500 years, 2,000 years ago, that doesn't make any meaning to me. The most important thing is that the present generation, what are you doing? Our grandparents, if they stayed for 500 years and they didn't have the kind of conflict we have. You know, the sad thing about us is that our parents didn't go to school, but they did everything possible for us to be educated so that we'll be better than them, so that we'll be able to add value to that environment. But unfortunately, today we have doctors, we have generals, we have engineers, everybody. It is we that are producing drug addicts. It is we that are producing the youth that are murdering people. And the greatest tragedy that Nigeria was not about Kaduna State, especially between Kaduna and Southern, the Kaduna Central, Kaduna North, and the southern part of the state is the tragedy of this segregation that has taken place. Let me give you an example. The Zongo crisis that led to the segregation is 28 years today. And a child who was 10 years or even 15 years at that age, he should be around 35, 40. And he has lived an environment whereby he's segregated, primary school, nursery school. The only time he will know what diversity is when he gets to the university, possibly. And don't forget, from the primary school to the secondary school is where you develop character, develop opinion. The same thing with the Muslim who is living in the northern part. All he takes, all he knows is a Muslim, and he grows up seeing all these things. He has no interaction with his Christian brother. The Christian brother has no interaction with his Muslim brother. And he grows believing that he is not interacting with him because he's an enemy. And we, the elite.
Suleiman Gora, thank you. Let's bring in Most Reverend Josiah Ido-Ferron here now to, because you talked about the need for government to follow decisions, to logical conclusions. So I'd like to ask the Most Reverend, is there a conflict prevention plan in place by the Commission?
Yes. And that is a part of the program we are running. One major problem in our state, Kaduna State, is this. There is that ignorance of my own religion and the religion of my neighbor. So we, as a commission, are also committed to helping the two major religious communities, the Muslim and the Christian communities, to actually understand their own religion and to also understand the religion of your neighbor. That is one step in conflict prevention. Number two, it is not just having the head knowledge. We are also planning to help the two communities to work together. There is a need for cooperation. As Brother Suleiman has just said, we must look beyond the past. We want to encourage our brothers and sisters to stop lamentations and to move on. Because we are in a new generation of educated young men and women. And as I always say, C.S. Lewis says, education without values produces men and women who are cleverer than the devil. So there is a need to bring in the religious dimension, and the state government is actually encouraging and supporting us in this idea of opening up our brothers and sisters to their own religion and to the religion of the other. That's something we have taken seriously.
All right. Thank you very much, Most Reverend Josiah Ferron. That's a very interesting point that you have raised there. I was also going to raise this with you as a commission, but I would like Malam Ahmad Mairiga to also respond to this. That namely, how do you keep out conflict merchants from either stoking conflict or, as it were, starting off one, because they benefit from it. And we have seen the destruction that has gone on. There are persons behind who are smiling. So, gentlemen, you are all peacemakers, you are all peace lovers, but how do you keep out those who are hunting for trouble and seeking to sell their arms and weapons?
Well, I am with the opinion, and a very, very strong opinion indeed, that we, the Fulani, Hausa, and Atiap communities, should toil the path of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was asked in an international press conference where and why, after coming out of jail, he kept supporting people like Fidel Castro, he kept supporting people like Muammar Gaddafi, and he kept supporting people like Yasser Arafat. Even when from human rights records, intelligence, and whatever had proved that these people are enemies of the world, enemies of the West, etc., etc. Nelson Mandela told them, I believe you know that interview, that look, Yasser Arafat, Muammar Gaddafi, and indeed Fidel Castro of Cuba stood for South Africa in all ramifications, in fighting the war, that thing that happened, and not just by utterances or words of their mouth. They supported the struggle for the apartheid struggle in South Africa with their strength, with their wealth, with their everything. So if you think that by your own records, Yasser Arafat, Fidel Castro, and Muammar Gaddafi are enemies of the West, does not connote that they should be enemies of the people of South Africa. They are our people. I want to go and toy along that line to say that even when we signed this communique on that day, like I said, I was a signatory representing the Fulani community, cannot be and will not be, by the grace of God, distracted by people who will want to see that they derail this process. Like the Most Reverend said, that ensuring that peace returns in Southern Kaduna is not just synonymous to, just saying it, or like what my brother said here, Suleiman, on just the screen and papers and whatever. It will be followed by action. I want to assure you.
Malam Ahmad Mairiga, I'm sorry to interject. We're almost running out. In fact, we have run out of time. But first, let me appreciate Most Reverend Josiah Idowu Ferron, Secretary General, Anglican Consultative Council, and Chairman Kaduna Peace Pact Commission. We'd like to appreciate you very much. And also Suleiman Gora Makama Atiup, community leader of the Atiup Chiefdom and Chairman Gora Gan Peace and Development Committee. Both of you, I'd like to thank you. And if you can just display for us, give yourselves a handshake to show, of course, the new Peace Pact. Malam Suleiman, and thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless you. And so that's it on Good Morning Nigeria for today. We'd like to appreciate all of you. Kingsley.
All right, yeah, that's a sweet one. But we hope that in our studios there are hand sanitizers, so that in compliance with the coronavirus protocols, you sanitize your hands. So, gentlemen, we appreciate you. Best of luck to you all and to the people of Kaduna and indeed Nigeria. So that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today and indeed for the week. Program returns on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
I'm Claire Delabo Abdulrazak. Bye-bye.